Hello, welcome to the video, which is going to be about fordranger track rod ends. So this is a 2007 fordranger 2.5 TDCi double cab 4x4. It's done about 63,000 miles. And I decided to get the wheel alignment sorted out the other day because the steering wheel isn't quite straight when you're driving straight, and that really annoys me, so I decided I wanted to sort it out. So I took it to the place I usually go to and I had a call about half an hour later saying, we're very sorry, we can't do your wheel alignment because we can't get the track rods undone. And we're worried that if we try any harder, they'd already heated them up a little bit, and they said, we're worried if we try any harder, we're going to break something. So I said, okay, fair enough, I'll come and collect it. I'm very pleased to say I wasn't charged for that, but obviously I need to do something about it. So what I've decided to do is try and take the track rods off. This is the one from the other side to the one I'm going to show you in a minute. Decided to take them off and see if I can loosen them up in the vise. It's very hard to hold them firmly without damaging the track rod ends because, as you probably know, the bit that goes into the hub and on the other end into the steering arm, they bend, they articulate. So if you put a whole lot of force against that, it's not going to be so good for the track rod end. I've got a load of copper slip over my hand now, and I'll explain why in a little bit. So what I decided to do is take these off and see if I could loosen them up. Now, they're not very expensive. It's about 30 quid for that entire thing. So if you're paying someone else's labour rates to do this, it might be cheaper to just have the whole lot replaced. However, I must say I managed to free this side up pretty easily once it was clamped in the vise. I did need a crow's foot socket and a very long breaker bar, and I was actually surprised that it freed up so easily, but it did. I'm hoping this side will do the same. I'm smiling because obviously when you decide to video it, it's liable to play up, but let's see how we get on. Anyway, so if your wheel alignment's absolutely fine, but you've got a damaged track rod end or tie rod end that you need to replace, this video will also be relevant to you because you still need to separate this bit and you need to be able to undo this bit in order to do that replacement. So I'll show you how I undo them, take them out, and then we'll go through freeing it up in the vise. Let's get started. The vehicle's jacked up already on axle stands and the wheels off. I'm going to start by turning the steering over to the left a little bit. I need to go easy with this because the lock stop that stops it going too far would actually be on the right hand side, and because the right hand side isn't moving at all because I've got the track rod end out, I need to be careful not to go too far. So I'll just do 1 and a quarter turns, something like that. Okay, let's start with the outer track rod end first. As you'll know, or as you'll see, these have a split pin holding them in, and I can pretty much guarantee that this will break. Because it's in all the road salt and everything in the position that it is. There's a lot of different ways of doing this. Some people would just put an impact on the socket, cut it off short, cut the split pin off short, put an impact on the socket, and then chew up the split pin as it comes off. And I may yet end up doing that myself because the way this is, it's going to be very difficult to get it out. I've got a punch that's small enough to go through the split pin hole and knock it out, but to do that I've got to punch from that way, and I can't really punch from that way with this as it is because that's the head of the split pin. Now that seems pretty stuck to me. So what I think I'm going to do is punch, centre punch the head of the split pin and then drill it Thankfully these split pins are usually pretty rubbish metal. They usually drill through quite easily. You can no doubt tell I've just decided to snap those off. Okay, the softly approach isn't working so well on this side. It did on the other side. So I'm going to do what I don't really like doing, but which will most probably get the job done, which is I've drilled as much of the split pin from that side and I've snapped off as much as I can from the other side. So we can get the socket on. This is a 17. There we go. Hopefully no threads were harmed in the removal of that track rod end. Right, now we come to removing the track rod end. Several different ways of doing this. I prefer the hit it with a hammer method. Let's see how we go. There. Just be careful, as I hope I was. Yes, I was. You're hitting that, not that. Okay, now we move on to the inner track rod end. And the way these are installed, this one's going to be just as much of a faff as the other one. At least I suspect it is. Well, would you believe that? That one actually moved. These ones are a little bit more protected from all the muck that comes up from the road, although not much, so maybe that has worked to my advantage. I might actually even bother spraying some lubricant on that one, see if I can get it out. Hey, look at that. Well, that is the first of 4 that's come out nearly whole. Now, to get this inner track rod end out, I'm going to use a different method because you probably clocked that there isn't really space to swing a hammer. And I'm cleaning the thread because I need this castellated nut to be able to undo really easily, because we're going to have to undo it if my method works anyway, we're going to have to undo it once we've taken this track rod end out of the taper. So we don't want any friction because it'll just end up being a right faff to undo. I'm going to put some copper grease on there as well, just to make sure that it goes on nice and smoothly, or at least that's the theory. There. So now we have the challenge of getting this out, and of course now if I turn that nut, the whole track rod end shaft is going to spin. But what I'm hoping will happen is I can just hold the taper in enough with my hands to buzz the nut off like that. And there we have one track rod end. Right, let's go to the bench and see what we can do with it. Okay, first thing I'm going to do while I remember is to tap out this split pin if I can. That seems to be going. Yep, indeed it does. Trying to avoid hammering directly onto the vise, but actually get this out if I'm gentle. I think I'm going to have to. Okay, that's that done. Just give that thread a little clean up now. Don't want an extra piece of wire wool on there, do we? Put the nut back on. These jam nuts do already look slightly chewed, which I'm a bit disappointed about. Put some WD-40 on there for what it's worth. Right, we have a 21, is it 21? 21 mil crow's foot socket on a long breaker bar. Let's see what we can do here. I'm going to move it round. Whew. Now, no wonder they couldn't undo that when it was on the car. Actually, credit where it's due. That was bloody tight. I'm still not convinced that I haven't snapped something there. No, it doesn't look like I have. I forgot to mention, and in fact I forgot to show it, I measured the distance between these flanges before I started so that I can put the steering back roughly where it was, because it wasn't terrible where it wasn't right, but it wasn't terrible, so I can get these roughly the right length when I put them back. The inner one is a traditional right hand thread, and the outer one, if I remember correctly, is a left hand thread. So let's give that thread a really good clean. May as well give the flats, the adjustment flats on the rod itself, a good clean as well. So this nut isn't in the best of shape, so just giving the flats a little clean up. Not too bad, but it was just stopping the socket going onto it just a little bit. So screw that back on. Okay, so the track rod end is saved, the jam nut is not. That is butchered, partly my fault, partly the fault of whoever had a crack at this before. I'm going to put this one back on now so that I don't get mixed up with which one goes on which end. There we go. Same again then, clean it up. I'm not going to bother putting that nut back on because I'm going to go and get some new ones. Just get the old thread measuring tool out. I presume these will be a metric fine. So 14. With a 1.5 pitch. I needn't to bother cleaning up the other one, need I? Because if I'm going to have one for one end, I may as well have one for the other end as well. So I'll be back with you when I've got some more jam nuts and then we'll put it back together. Right, some new nuts, hopefully labelled by the supplier as left and not left. This is the outer and this is left. Not quite the height, these are half nuts. Not quite the height of the ones of the outgoing ones, but close enough. You may think I'm a little bit obsessed with this. I would say generally not, but when it's on something that's already seized once, I do like to put a good amount on. That one I must say isn't too bad, but it's a little bit chewed, so I think I will, as I've got both. I decided to buy both to keep in the parts supply for later on. So as I've got both, I think I'll replace this one too. Forgot to screw that one down roughly to the line of where things were before. I'm not going to tighten them up, because I'll do that once I've got them bolted back onto the car. So for now they can just stay loose. Okay, let's put this back on. Just going to give those tapers a little clean, holes, whatever you call them, just so I can make sure I haven't got any grit in. Do the same with the track rod ends themselves. So at this point, despite my best efforts to clean the threads, the nut is not going on smoothly onto the track rod, and so the whole rod is turning in the taper. So, whilst I would prefer not to, just going to give it a quick one of those on the lowest torque setting on the impact gun, whilst holding the taper in with the other side, and that has tightened it up really nicely. Let's see how tight it is. Not too bad. So now I can torque that up. The Ranger manual has a range of torque settings. I think it's, well, the middle point of it is about 50 Newton meters, so that's what I'm doing here. And then we hope that that's lined up with a hole for the split pin. It has. Jolly good. This one feels like it's going on a little bit more easily, so it might tighten up without the impact, but if not, we can always give it a quick buzz. Yeah, that one's going to be all right. Now the final thing to do is to just set the alignment roughly where it was before. Obviously I'm going to go and have the alignment done on this car. That was the whole reason for doing this job in the first place. But I measured the distance between the flats, and it was 63 millimeters on this side. It's a 13 millimeter spanner I'm using to adjust this. I need to get my head in there to look at that properly because I'm getting measurement error from looking at the ruler sideways on. 65. Help if you remember which way you turned it, Andrew. 63. So the flats seem to be 22. No, sorry, they don't. I've got the spanners the wrong way around. The flats are 21. And the nuts 22. There is a torque setting for these lock nuts and it's about 70 Newton meters. I say about because the Ranger manual, as you may have gathered if you're not familiar with it, gives a range. I'm just going to do these, shall we say, pretty tight with the spanners. I don't want to make it any harder than it needs to be for the person doing the alignment. I've already had one failure at it because these things were too tight and couldn't be undone. So I'm going to do them tight enough that I'm happy they won't undo. So I'm also trying to make sure that the track rod ends are in the middle of their play range, if you see what I mean. What I don't want them to do is to have them locked against each other so that this can't twist in the course of the vehicle moving. It's pretty good at the moment, but I just think if I put that one in the middle... No, actually that's pretty good. They're both in the middle of their play with the suspension like that, so I'm happy with that. Okay, that's one side done then. I hope you found something useful in this video if either your Ranger needs a new track rod end because of an MOT failure or something like that, or because, like me, you've tried to do the wheel alignment and you found everything to be completely jammed up. In fairness to the garage that did the wheel alignment, or tried to do it, should I say, and didn't manage it, I can see why. I mean, it took the big breaker bar with the crow's foot wrench on the end of it, with the track rod clamped in the vise for me to be able to undo these. So I'm not surprised that working under the vehicle, they couldn't undo them. Hopefully they will be able to now. So when I've done the other side, I'm going to go and get the wheel alignment done, and that'll be this job all finished. As I say then, hope it helps. If it did, please give it a thumbs up and consider subscribing to the channel if you haven't already. Thanks very much for watching, and I'll look forward to seeing you again for the next one. Bye for now.